Unveiling the Sinister Chhalawa, a spine-chilling horror story of the cursed and haunted Emily lived in Maplewood Crescent, that perfect suburban neighborhood where the lawns bloomed like painted landscapes, and smiles hid secrets. Single and struggling, she spent her nights slinging greasy burgers and refilling coffee cups at the local diner while her 10-year-old son, Alex, remained blissfully alone in their little home. Exhaustion weighed on her, but the friendly faces of neighbors like Mr. and Mrs. Lawson eased her burdens until whispers of darkness began to creep in. It started innocently enough, a frayed book found in the diner's break room, its pages yellowed and ink smudged. The words leaped at her stories of the Chhalawa, a spirit born of deceit and envy, twisting the very fibers of family apart. Emily shuddered, shaking off the lurking fear. Folklore, she mustered, just stories. But then the chill came, a bone-deep coldness settled in her home, shadows flickered ominously in corners, and Alex's laughter took on an uneasy tone. Something was shifting beneath their carefully crafted veneer of normalcy. At first, Emily brushed it off. Alex had a new friend, he said. A secret buddy who shared big ideas and quiet giggles. But the innocent game of whispers morphed into something darker, each softened word dripping with menace. She could see Alex's eyes, bright yet unnaturally wide. The chill at her back returned, sharper now, gnawing at her sanity. She turned to her neighbors. They offered shallow smiles, veiled glances, and promises of help that never came. "Kids say the darndest things," they murmured, dismissing her concerns as mere hysteria. It stung. When she called the authorities, they shrugged, too buried in their own troubles to heed her warnings. Each snub deepened her certainty she was alone, drifting into a creeping paranoia as every familiar face started to look like the mask of a stranger. Then came the howls in the quiet nights. A noise that felt like fingers scraping across the walls of her mind. Alex, once an innocent child, began speaking almost in riddles, mumbling secrets she could barely decipher. Each night, the laughter seeped through the door, echoing unnaturally, twisting something deep in her stomach. Panic clenched at her heart, and she could feel the fabric of her world unraveling. Maplewood Crescent became a cage of whispers, suffocating her spirit. One particularly restless shift, she heard it, the unmistakable sound of Alex's laughter filtering through the crack of his bedroom door. Fumbling and confused, she peeked inside, and her breath caught. There he was, alone, eyes glazed and fixed on the wall, laughter bubbling like a distant echo. "Mommy, my friend says you're scared," he chimed, an unnerving innocence twisting his voice into something sinister. The laughter twisted around her like a noose. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that moment of silence, she felt the weight of 100 unseen eyes boring into her. The flickering shadows danced around like they were alive, breathing. Terror wrapped around her every thought. The whispers were growing heavier, filling the air with dread. They were becoming a part of her, dark tendrils pulling tighter. She frantically turned the pages of her mind, trying to piece together what she had dismissed. Then, as if to make her jump, her phone vibrated against the nightstand. An unknown number flashed across the screen. Heart racing, she opened the message, "Your neighbor knows." The muscles in her throat constricted, panic sweeping through every vein. She stood frozen at the threshold, feeling the shadows clutching at her ankles, ready to pull her under. Alex's laughter rang out again, echoing through the home this time, not just a child's play but a siren call from the darkness. What were they hiding? What had she unleashed? The fear slithered down her spine, and she knew the nightmare was just beginning. Emily's heart raced, pounding like a drum in the suffocating quiet of the house. She couldn't shake the feeling of being preyed upon, like something was waiting just out of sight, watching her, waiting to pounce. The laughter continued, echoing through the walls. Each sound reverberated deep in her bones, a cruel mockery that twisted the corner of her mind into knots. Throwing caution aside, she stepped fully into Alex's room. What she expected to see was her son, lost in some innocent fantasy. Instead, she found him sitting on the floor, circled by an array of toys, each one placed with meticulous care, as if part of a ritual. His eyes were locked onto a dark corner, shadow thickening there like a phantom slowly coalescing into something more concrete, creaking like the joints of an old door. "Alex, who are you talking to?" Emily's voice trembled, barely escaping her lips. She felt ridiculous for asking, for searching for an answer that seemed so obvious yet unreachable. "He has a name," came the reply, eerily cheerful. "He says he is a friend. A very, very special friend." This was no longer cute, no longer something to be brushed away as a child's vivid imagination. Her pulse spiked, each beat drumming out warnings in her head. There was a sharp chill in the air, it stung her lungs. She wanted to pull Alex into her arms and shield him from whatever had seeped into their lives, but the way he sat almost possessed froze her in place. Suddenly, there was a thud from the living room. The bookshelf leaned dangerously, the old wooden shelves creaking under an unseen weight. The apparition moving in the corner of Alex's room fluttered, almost like a dark curtain swaying in a night wind, whispering sweet nothings that trembled at the edges of comprehension. Just as she turned to investigate the noise, a violent gust of wind tore through the house, slamming the window shut. Pictures flew off the walls, chaos erupted, and far away, she heard the unmistakable sound of laughter infiltrating the mayhem, a cacophony that sent a cascade of dread into her heart. "Mommy!" Alex's voice cut through the chaos, high-pitched like a scream but with an oddly cheerful inflection. "He wants you to see." Panic surged, flooding her senses. Was he talking about that presence? She spun to look at her son just in time to see him standing up, arms lifted grotesquely, fingers splayed like claws. He pointed towards the corner as shadows twisted and writhed even further, pulling together in grotesque shapes that almost resembled faces. She couldn't breathe in that instant, clarity pierced her horror. This wasn't just a ghost story, it was real, a tangible horror that had wrapped its claws around her family, its tendrils creeping in deeper every day. "Alex, come to me. Right now." Tears blurred her vision as she instinctively reached for him. Just then, her phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wooden floor like a warning bell. "Why are you scared, Mommy?" Alex asked, chuckling as if he were merely playing hide and seek. "He says he can keep me safe." A black wave surged in the corner of her eye, and the room grew darker by the second. The laughter rose, morphing into something hollow and menacing, a sound devoid of joy, a warning of things that could not be undone. Emily knew she had to act fast before whatever was dragging Alex down into the abyss snatched her son away entirely. What dark secrets were hidden behind the friendly smiles of her neighbors? What was she missing? "Alex, listen to me," she shouted, feeling desperate tears spill down her cheeks. "We need to go right now." But as those words left her mouth, darkness crashed forward like a tidal wave, clamping down on her throat and squeezing the air from her lungs. The laughter stopped, replaced by a deep silence that resonated with terror. A voice purred from the shadow, inviting, and yet twisted with malice. "Stay with us, Emily, or lose everything." What choice would she make in the face of overwhelming darkness? The encroaching terror of Maplewood Crescent had just begun. Light flickered one moment, then vanished entirely as a thick fog of blackness suffocated the room. Emily's heart raced, desperation clawing at her throat like the very shadow that wrapped around her. "Mommy!" Alex's voice somewhere in the dark was both too close and too far away, an echo of innocence twisted by the malevolent presence invading their home. She felt the oppressive silence seep into her bones, freezing her in place as her mind raced with possibilities. Was Alex truly gone, or was this just another game? She dared to take a shuddering step forward, hand outstretched, but a chilling gust struck her, pushing her back like teeth gnashing through the air. "Leave him alone," she cried, fear lacing her voice. It fell on deaf ears. The air pulsed with the unyielding laughter, mocking, cruel, taunting. In her mind, Emily could imagine the shadow coalescing into something darker and more grotesque shapes forming from her nightmares and crashing into her reality. Suddenly, as if responding to her call, the lights flickered back on with a jarring brightness. But Alex was gone. The toys were mere scattered relics of childhood. Panic surged through her again, and she staggered back, heart thudding like a hammer in her chest. The air thickened, heavy and saturated with dread. "Alex!" she yelled, panic spilling into every syllable. She stumbled out of his room, eyes darting down the hall. The house felt alien, a labyrinth of echoes and shadows. Desperation took hold, urging her deeper into the belly of this nightmare. Frantically, she checked the living room. Nothing but the aftermath of chaos. A coffee table toppled over, a chair askew. It looked more like a violent burst of fury rather than her child's absent presence. "Alex, please. Where are you?" Her voice quaked. There was no answer, just the unsettling whisper of the wind creeping through the cracks of the windows. Then, in the corner of her eye, the drapes swayed ever so slightly, and she felt an icy breath waft across her face. Slowly, she approached, the willingness to confront her fears tugging at her resolve. With trembling fingers, she pushed aside the drapes. The chill hit her like a slap. The window stood open. Night air flooded in, full of unfamiliar sounds, laughter echoing from somewhere outside. "Mommy!" The cry of her son split through the hush, threading urgency through the night. It was coming from the backyard. Emily's heart tumbled as she rushed towards the back door. Opening it felt like crossing over into another world. The yard was shrouded in darkness, grass damp and sodden beneath her bare feet, giving her the sensation of stepping into a grave. Straining her ears, familiar sounds called out again, drawing her to the thick cluster of trees at the edge of their property. "Alex!" Panic solved every hesitation she felt a moment before. She sprinted forward, shoving through branches that clawed at her as if the forest itself was trying to pull her back. The laughter swelled, and her heart tightened. It was no longer just Alex's voice. "Come play with us, Emily!" A chorus of children rang out amidst the trees, innocent yet tainted, each note laced with sinister charm. She stumbled over roots, nearly falling, hands clutching the bark for support. The shadows began to tease her, outlines wriggled as if alive, beckoning her closer. "Stay with us!" the voice cooed again, wrapping around her like a cold embrace. They were waiting. Emily could feel the world tilting, reality itself shifting below her feet, dragging her towards the unmapped horrors of this cursed night. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. But something more than fear ignited within her resolve, a spark that roared with the instinct to find her son. Suddenly, two small hands latched onto hers, warmth breaking through the shadow like the first light of dawn. "Mommy, don't listen. They'll take you too." Emily jerked her gaze towards her boy's face, eyes wide with terror. He was there, he was safe. But the shadows lunged, eager to swallow them whole. "Run!" she screamed, all courage in her heart surging. Fourth. They turned to flee, but behind them, that laughter faded back into the shadows, a promise of the nightmare that would come again. Yet even as they ran, the trees closed in, whispering secrets, hungry for her fear. Would the darkness relent? Would it ever let them go? The presence lingered, breathing down their necks, an unwelcome companion that wouldn't let go. "Where can we hide, Mommy?" In that fragile moment, Emily knew the fight was far from over. The house had secrets, but what was it hiding? The night howled with the same hungry laughter that had echoed around them, a chilling reminder of the stakes. Emily's heart raced, each thought a countdown to their fate. She clutched Alex's hand tighter, trying to quiet the panic rising within her. They darted away from the trees, back toward the house that had turned into a den of horrors. But with each step, the shadows seemed to pulse, almost alive, as if eager to reach out and grip them again. "Mommy, they're coming!" Alex cried, glancing back, his voice tinged with desperation. The innocence in his tone gutted her, and she forced herself to look behind. The trees swayed, their branches bending with an unnatural courtesy, revealing distorted figures writhing among the boughs. A cluster of childlike silhouettes danced just out of reach, their limbs twisted into grotesque shapes. Though they wore familiar faces, friends from school and the neighborhood, their giggles twisted the essence of joy into something sinister. "No. Don't look at them," she shouted, yanking her son back toward the house. "We have to go." They reached the back porch, gasping for breath, hurtling through the door. Inside, the air felt different, thick with lingering dread, a heaviness that wrapped around them like a shroud. The front door slammed shut on its own, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Mommy, what's happening?" Alex trembled beside her. The house seemed to respond to his fear, creaking with an ominous life of its own. "I don't know, honey. We need to find a way out, or hide," Emily whispered, forcing her voice to remain steady. But in her heart, she already sensed that the darkness was closing in. "Let's check the basement." She grabbed his hand again, leading him toward the narrow staircase that spiraled down into shadows. With each step they descended, the world above brightened, as if the sun had forced its way into their home. But the basement was a different story. It was engulfed in pitch-black silence, thick darkness swallowing them whole as they reached the last step. "Mommy, I don't like this," Alex murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "It'll be okay. We just need to hide until morning," Emily said, squinting into the gloom, her eyes searching for anything familiar. The basement smelled of mildew and something else, something metallic that sent a shiver down her spine. Suddenly, the laughter returned, louder and more frantic. It echoed inside the basement, bouncing off the stone walls like an angry swarm. "Mommy! They're in here!" Alex pressed against her leg, his small frame trembling. Emily's heart pounded as she grabbed a nearby shovel, its cold surface grounding her desperate thoughts. "Stay close," she urged, backing toward the far wall as the laughter transformed into mocking whispers. "Come play with us, Emily. We're waiting," the voices taunted, blending into something that felt both familiar and malevolent. Emily could almost see their faces pressed against the edges of her mind, twisted, distorted, begging her to join their game. She scanned the dark space. There had to be something, some way to block them out. As she turned, she noticed an old trunk in the corner. Maybe they could hide inside until it all passed. "Quick, Alex. In here," she directed, her voice urgent. They scrambled toward the trunk, nearly falling as the laughter rose around them, demanding their attention, but as they got closer, the air chilled. Frost seeped from the trunk, creeping like fingers along her skin. The whispers turned to shouts, clamoring for their attention, pulling her into the dark chaos. "Let us go," Emily urged, but as she reached for the trunk's lid, she felt something ice-cold grasp her wrist with a bone-crushing force. She whirled around, eyes wide, and gasped as she came face to face with a shadow formed into a child, its features an eerie imitation of Alex's but twisted, like a cracked mirror reflecting fear. "Mommy, it's taking you away!" Alex screamed, his horror palpable. In that moment, the realization struck her with the force of a thunderclap. The entity wasn't just hunting Alex, it wanted her too. The line between mother and child blurred in the chaos surrounding them. As the shadow lunged forward, Emily bellowed, brandishing the shovel as she struggled against the icy grip. Would they escape its clutches? Would she lose everything? The darkness continued to pulse, breathing around them, eager to consume. Emily knew they were caught in a game far beyond their understanding, and the rules had yet to be revealed. With that cold grip tightening, would they find the strength to break free, or would they fall prey to the sinister pull of the cursed night? The grip released, but not gently. It drew back like a serpent, slithering away into the darkness. Emily gasped, pulling Alex tighter against her. "We need to get out. Now," she urged, her voice strained with terror. The shadows around them hissed, rattling like dry leaves in the wind, and laughter echoed, somehow louder now, as if the very walls of the basement were mocking their attempt to escape. Alex, eyes wide with fright, pointed at the trunk. "Mommy, it was watching us. I saw its eyes." The fear clawed at her throat. What had she almost let them into? The trunk seemed more like a gateway to some horror rather than a refuge. She shook her head, struggling to hold on to reason. "It's just a trunk, honey. Just wood and metal." But as she spoke, her mind raced. The laughter faded, replaced by a low, throaty growl, the kind that resonated in her bones. "Let us go," Emily urged, pulling Alex away from the trunk, but the basement seemed determined to hold them, to keep them there. With shaky steps, they edged toward the stairs, but the floor groaned beneath them, a dull rumble that surged through her as if the home itself were alive, angry. "Don't look back, sweetheart," she commanded, steeling her resolve. As they neared the staircase, a sudden wave of cold engulfed them. It prickled against her skin like ice shards, forcing her to shiver uncontrollably. She turned her head slightly, despite the warning in her gut. Curiosity gnawed at her. The shadows had begun to swirl, dark, insatiable tendrils snaked toward them, eager to devour. "Mommy!" Alex squealed, his small hands clutching her shirt, his cheeks flushed white with fear. "They want us." "No, they don't," she shouted, the words catching in her throat. But deep down, doubt gnawed at her mind. Perhaps what they wanted wasn't just to play. Perhaps they craved something darker. The growl roared again, shaking the foundation. Wooden beams creaked as if in agony, and the laughter returned, now mixed with guttural whispers. "Stay with us forever," Emily's heart raced. "We have to go, now." She flung the basement door open, a sliver of light breaking the oppressive darkness. But before they could escape, a black tendril shot out, wrapping around her ankle like a vice, pulling her back into the suffocating void. "Mommy!" Alex's scream echoed through the air, the sound sharp enough to cut through the malevolence. She could see the fear on his face, wide eyes, trembling lip. She couldn't let him see her falter. Not now. With an adrenaline surge, Emily grabbed the shovel, swinging it wildly at the darkness. The blade connected with something solid, and a shriek pierced the air, high and echoing. The grip on her ankle loosened just enough, and she lunged forward, dragging Alex with her. They scrambled up the stairs, every step feeling like an eternity as the house throbbed with rage. But as they burst through the door into the dimly lit hallway, relief washed over her. They were out of the basement until they heard it. The rhythmic ticking, low at first, grew louder and more frantic until it felt like a drum beating in their ears. Emily's hair stood on end. "What is that?" she whispered, scanning the dimly lit corridor. Shadows danced across the walls, writhing like serpents. "It's coming!" Alex shrieked, pointing toward the end of the hall, where the shadows thickened, writhing with dark intent. With no time to dissect the horror unfolding, Emily grabbed her son, and they bolted down the hall. But just as they reached the living room, a door slammed shut, locking them in. Panic surged through her as the walls appeared to compress around them. Then came the knocking. Slow at first, then quickening. A chorus of whispers echoed with each rap, drowning her thoughts. "Let us in, let us out." Emily thrust her shoulder against the door, but it would not bow to her desperation. The shadows coiled tighter, pulling her closer to the sound, deeper into the very essence of terror. "Stay behind me," she commanded, but doubt flooded her. They were trapped. What had she brought them into? Suddenly, the door began to rattle violently. The voices outside grew frantic. Join us with each pulse of the door." Emily's grip on reality cracked. Would she break? Could there still be a way to escape? Her thoughts disrupted as the doorknob twisted unnaturally, turning slowly, almost inviting them to the dark beyond. In that fleeting moment, she felt it, the undeniable lure of shadows, alive with desire to draw her closer. Could she defy it? Or would she, and Alex, slip into the void? The question hung above them like the ever-looming darkness that promised to consume them whole. The door bucked against her shoulder, but it held firm. Each knock felt like a judgment, a demand for access that rattled her core. Emily could hear the whispers rising, a cacophony of voices laced with dread, each word coated in a thick layer of malice, urging her to surrender. "Join us, join us. Mommy." Alex's little voice trembled, tiny hands gripping her leg so hard she felt a warning ache. She didn't dare take her eyes off the door. "I'm scared." She pressed her back against the door, shushing him, but her heart raced. She could almost feel the presence of something there, just on the other side, pushing, wanting, needing. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely, trying to channel strength she didn't feel. The air around them felt heavier, as if invisible hands were attempting to coalesce the shadows into tangible shapes. They pressed against her skin like the fingers of 1,000 cold souls, then, without warning, the door swung inwards with a force that sent Emily crashing to the wooden floor. Her heart plummeted. "Alex!" she screamed as she scrambled back, desperate fingers brushing desperately against the rough surface. The world around her blurred, shadows pooling like ink over every corner of the room, creeping into her vision. The whispers grew unbearably loud, blending into one horrifying chant. "Let us in, let us out." Every face she could imagine, the things lurking in her mind twisted in the darkness, mouths gaping wide in silent screams, eyes glimmering with unholy hunger. Just beyond the threshold, she could sense them gathering, waiting patiently for the moment she'd break. "Mommy!" Alex cried out, a wail of pure terror that slashed through her fog of fear. She whipped her head around in time to see him being pulled toward the yawning shadows at the door. The tiny boy's eyes were wide with horror as he stumbled backwards, dragging the weight of fear with him, but of course, it was overwhelming. "No!" Emily lunged, arm outstretched, but the void seemed to swell, pulsating like a malevolent creature coming to life. The moment he vanished from view, something deep within her shattered. "Alex!" she screamed. A desperation clawed at her throat, and she could taste the metallic tang of panic. Then came a low rumble, deep and throaty, emanating from the very foundations of the house. The walls shook as if the structure itself were protesting the evil it harbored. Emily pushed herself up against the wall, forcing herself toward the door, battling against a wave of dread that threatened to drown her. She gritted her teeth. "I'm coming," she vowed aloud, though uncertainty flooded her mind. She could almost hear the mocking laughter reverberate around her as she lunged through the doorway. But where was Alex? Where had he been taken? Thrumming chaos pulsed in the darkness, drowning her thoughts. Shadows danced like wild flames. Emily fought to keep her focus, her breath coming in sharp, gasping bursts. The entire house felt like a terrible trap, closing in, and yet there was this relentless urge to reach out and prove that her son was still there somewhere. "Alex!" she shouted, her voice ringing against damp walls, but only silence responded. Almost mocking her efforts. Drawing back her strength, she took a step into the living room, where the shadows writhed more fiercely. It was a swirling vortex of dark intent, glimmering with the promise of despair. The comforting familiarity of her home had become alien, a twisted mockery of the love it once held. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a glimpse of something small darting just out of her view. "Alex!" she called again, apprehension clawing at her throat. In the distance, the shadows twisted and turned, forming not only shapes but figures, one emerging into clarity, a figure mirrored in the dim light. One that sent ice into her veins. "Join us," it murmured softly, a sickly sweet tone that reverberated with an otherworldly echo. And there he was, Alex, gazing at her with glazed eyes, a blank stare as if he was lost somewhere deeper than the physical world. Behind him, the darkness rippled, emboldened by his presence. "Emily," he whispered, voice trembling, though distant like an echo from a distant shore. Panic surged anew, a tidal wave overtaking her senses. "No. Come back." She felt the weight of the shadows closing in, felt the room tilt on its axis, her heart pounding like a warning bell against the encroaching void. Every beat twisted with fear. Could she reach him in time? Before she could react, the shadows lunged, spilling forth like a flood eager to consume everything in their path. What would she do? Would she plunge into the depths of despair to save her son? As they crowded in, a suffocating darkness, Emily didn't have to wait long to know. Their choice would come with a price. And that price would reveal itself in the minutes to come. The walls of the living room echoed hollowly, filled with a tension that seemed to pulse along with her racing heart. The real question loomed ahead: could she still protect him, or would they both be lost forever? The shadows lunged, reeking of damp earth and decay, like an avalanche crashing down on her. Emily's instincts kicked in. She threw her body forward, her heart racing, fueled by that desperate need to save Alex. The air grew thicker, almost viscous, as if the darkness itself conspired against her. Alex! She screamed again, her throat raw and raspy. The name echoed and faded, swallowed by the sinister void as the shadows tangled around her legs, clutching and digging in, trying to pull her into their dank, suffocating embrace. That in the haze of murky darkness, the figure of her son swirled in and out of focus. Mommy! Each time his voice reached her, it sounded further away, waning like a dying flame. The shadows snickered, their whispers filling her mind with chill and dread. Stop it! She roared, swinging her arms wildly, hoping to push them back. But each thrust met a wall of cold, seething hatred. Helplessness seeped into her bones as the shadows pushed closer, their whispers gloating. Let us in, join us. Each chant felt like nails on a chalkboard grating against her sanity. She forced her thoughts back, focused instead on the image of Alex, wide-eyed, pleading. He needed her. With every ounce of will she could muster, she stepped deeper into the dark, heart pounding a frantic rhythm. I'm right here. She yelled, trying to drown out the mocking cacophony. Leave her. A new voice seeped through the shadows, deep and resonant, vibrating through the chilling air. Emily turned, startled. In its wake, the shadows recoiled slightly, allowing a sad light to flicker. The mysterious figure, a gaunt silhouette broader and taller than her, faced the dark. What are you? She gasped, clenching her fists, ready for any treachery. I'm your chance, it replied, voice iron and gravel. It stepped closer, shattering the silence of evil that enveloped her. For a fleeting moment, Emily glimpsed clarity. It bore the semblance of a man but lacked the warmth of flesh. Instead, it radiated a frigid aura, an ancient chill that made the hairs on her arms stand. Get Alex out of here, she urged, feeling the pressure of the malevolence pressing against her. The figure, momentarily paused, shook its head. You must choose, it said, monotone with an echoing weight like a bell tolling. You can save him, but it comes at a cost. You must give yourself to the darkness. The shadows writhed, a wicked storm eager to devour her. Emily shuddered, squeezing her eyes shut. Would she betray her own soul to save her child? The thought bombarded her, each heartbeat a reminder of her responsibility, her love. What a dreadful bargain. Mommy! Alex cried once more, the sound fading into despair. No. The surge of her maternal instinct slashed through her doubts. She opened her eyes, determination breaking through the ominous fog. I won't let you take him. At that moment, the shadows froze, as if her rejection reverberated through their very essence. She felt the weight of every anguished soul howl around her, but there was Alex, standing further out of reach. She could see his terrified face, pleading for her with those innocent eyes. Then, an idea sparked within her. If the shadows needed her to join them to claim Alex, she could turn that against them. You need me, she shouted, feeling strength swell in her chest. But I won't give in. I'll fight. The dark quaked, shuddering as if rattled. She took a deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs. You want me? Then come for me. Even as she felt their cold fingers inch closer, she stepped back into the fray, battling not only the shadows but the doubt tightening around her heart. That in a moment of clarity, she leaped forward, charging away from the yanking shadows. "Alex!" she yelled as she raced, extending her hand to bridge the distance. But as her body collided into the thick of darkness, the cost began to reveal itself. The violent shadows responded, weaving tighter around her limbs, biting into her skin, a dark response to her defiance. "Mommy!" Alex screamed, tears streaming down his face while shadows threatened to swallow him. Could she really save him, or was she merely leading them both into doom? As she fought against the shadows, the chilling voice whispered again, join us. The choice loomed over her, heavy as the dark that enveloped them. Was there any way out, or had she already lost them both? In a fleeting heartbeat, she felt the ground slip beneath her. Just as her strength faltered, a blinding pinprick of light appeared ahead of her. Was it hope, or another twisted trick of the shadows? Desperation clawed at her heart as she pushed onward, ready to grasp whatever lay beyond that flicker, knowing time was running out. But could she reach it before the darkness devoured them both? What would she sacrifice in the end? The light flickered like a dying star, teasing her with its warmth in the frigid expanse of dark. Emily's breath quickened, panic radiating through her veins. The shadows tightened, their icy grip pulsing with malicious energy, drawing her back into their depths. "Alex!" she cried again, her voice rising above the sinister chorus of whispers. The flickering light seemed to beckon her, but she felt the shadows pulling her apart, 1,000 tiny strings of despair twisting around her. Would the light lead her to freedom, or was it a bellowing trap set by the dark? Every inch she moved was met with an unbearable heaviness. The darkness whispered promises, soft yet vile. "Join us, be free." The words coiled around her mind, drilling into her thoughts, trying to erode her will. But she gritted her teeth, shaking her head violently. "No." She spat, straining against the shadow's grasp. She fixed her gaze on the dim light, focusing on that fleeting hope. Every heartbeat drummed the mantra in her chest, "Save Alex." With everything she had left, she surged toward the glow, each step a battle against the oppressive cold. The shadows hissed, a chorus of discontent, rushing to push her back. "You'll never escape," they taunted, fingers of darkness reaching for her. "Mommy!" Alex's voice cracked through the dissonance, tearing away at her heart. His cry was like a dagger, cutting through the suffocating dark. She could see him now, snot dripping from his nose, eyes wide and filled with terror. Her heart shattered at the sight. "I'm coming!" she bellowed, tears pooling as she risked one last leap toward the light. Just as she stretched out her hand, feeling the warmth begin to envelop her fingers, a sharp pain pierced her side. Cold tendrils of darkness wound around her torso tighter, more insidious than before, dragging her backward as if the shadows felt her defiance and were determined to punish her. "No more!" she roared, summoning a hidden strength. Emily twisted, wrenching her body free for just a crucial moment from the grasp of despair. The light pulsed, like a heartbeat urging her on. It flickered brighter. "Trust the light, Emily." The voice belonged to the shadowed figure, echoing through her mind. She couldn't see it anymore, but its presence loomed in her thoughts, compelling her forward. But doubt crept in. What if that light was merely another lie? What if the figure was a tool of the shadows, another user seeking to manipulate her into joining the cursing darkness? "Alex!" A fresh wave of urgency crashed over her. She couldn't afford to hesitate. With a primal yell, Emily drove forward again. She felt the cold shadows tearing into her skin, but she pushed through the pain. Each step was a rebellion against the ancient evil that sought to consume her. She had to believe in the light. Time blurred as the shadows howled, a cacophony of rage and hunger. "You'll never save him!" they screamed, their contempt degenerating into wild shrieks, yet Emily's heart raced toward the flicker that dared to illuminate her darkened path. Suddenly, the light expanded, and she could feel its warmth wrapping around her like a cloak. In that moment, she caught her breath a chance. Her hand reached out, fingertips brushing against the edge of the glow. "Mommy!" screamed Alex, thrashing helplessly in the dark. With one final surge of desperation, Emily lunged toward the light, thinking it could truly be her salvation. But the shadows were not done yet. They roared in fury, and she was met with a sudden pull, a gut-wrenching force that threatened to tear her apart. "Join us forever," the voices echoed, and Emily felt the ancient pact pulsating through her soul. In that haunting instant, she realized she stood at a precipice between two worlds, the shimmering light threatening to shield her and the ever-looming darkness, insistent and merciless. Would she be able to save Alex, or would she be swallowed whole, destined to join the shadows? The choice lay bare before her, yet uncertainty gnawed at the edges of her resolve. As the shadows clawed closer, a near-silent truth threaded through her thoughts: some darkness could not be fought. But could she fight it long enough to reach, to rescue her son? The answer shrouded in turmoil. Emily lunged, her voice echoing into the abyss. But would she emerge victorious, or be lost forever? The shadows recoiled for a moment, snarling as Emily's leap toward the light sent a ripple through the encroaching darkness. They writhed and twisted, like snakes unsure of their next move. She could feel the warmth of the glow seeping into her skin, a thin veil of safety wrapping around her. But the moment was fleeting. "Emily! Help me!" Alex's voice echoed, desperation spilling over each word like shattered glass. Her heart pounded, threatening to burst as she refocused on him. He was farther away than she'd thought, his figure flickering like a candle caught in a draught, lost among the undulating shadows. Without hesitation, she bolted toward him. Each step felt like running through molasses thick, impossible. The shadows clawed at her, leaving bitter trails of ice down her arms. She gritted her teeth, bracing herself against the biting darkness. "I'm coming!" she shouted, unwilling to break her focus, unwilling to let the fear take hold. "Mommy!" Alex screamed again, more frantic this time, and the darkness roared in response, a booming sound that shook the very ground she stood on. It felt like a beast, hungry and ruthless, groping for her soul. Closer she had to get closer. Just as she reached out for him, a sickening force yanked her back. The cold claws latched onto her ankles, dragging her backward into an abyss filled with howling anger. Panic clawed at her throat. No. Yet, something else surged within her, a fire igniting her will to fight. Emily spun around, ripping herself from their icy grip. Her eyes locked onto the light again, which flared like a warning. "Trust the light, Emily." The whisper echoed behind her, now more insistent, more familiar than before. "Alex." She sprinted again, vision narrowing on her son's terrified face. The shadows hissed, their sinister whispers taking form, wrapping her in chains made of shadows and fear. "You don't belong here." They shrieked, their voices shrill and mocking. With a roar of defiance, Emily slammed her fist into the nearest shadow. It dissipated like smoke, but more quickly replaced it, lunging at her edges. "Leave me alone." But the shadows whispered soft promises, wrapping around her and slowing her advance. "You belong with us, your son will suffer, join us," she faltered, the words weaving through her mind like tendrils of silk. Doubt, a nagging parasite, burrowed deeper into her thoughts. What if they were right? What if she couldn't save Alex, that her fight was in vain? "No!" she bellowed, shaking her head violently, trying to fight back the creeping despair. A surge of will surged through her. No more uncertainty. With her heart thudding painfully loud, she charged toward the light once again. Step after agonizing step, she felt the shadows clinging tighter, but the pulse of the light shot through her, igniting her determination. "Mommy!" Alex's cry broke through, raw and chilling. Just inches away now, she grasped at the warmth of that beckoning glow. But an unseen force slammed into her side, sending her sprawling, slamming her against the ground. Pain sliced up her arm as the darkness converged, swirling violently, inching closer. Then, she saw something, a fleeting glimpse of fear reflected in the light. It was there for a moment, then gone. A flicker, a shadow slipping through the light's grasp. "Wait," she whispered to herself. What was that? Fear turned to confusion, and in that moment of distraction, the shadows seized their chance, wrapping around her completely. Join us forever. The darkness enveloped her fully, whispering serpentine lies. She gasped, panic igniting in her chest. Was this truly the end? The thought sickened her, choking the last remnants of her hope. But then she remembered Alex's face. His fear. It thrummed through her, his light dancing within her like a beacon. No. She screamed fiercely, forcing the shadows back, pushing away the tendrils that tried to choke her spirit. Suddenly, she felt a shift in the air, an opening. Was it from the light? Or was it something darker? The shadows shrieked, reeling from her strength, but they were relentless. You can't escape. Emily clutched the last shred of light, her heart waging war against the darkness that closed in around her. Where was Alex now? As reality warped, she stood teetering on the edge of both realms, pulsing with anxiety. The choice was not only hers. It was hers and Alex's. But would she fight long enough to reclaim him before the darkness devoured them whole? The struggle continued as shadows tightened their grip, and Emily realized she had to make a choice. Would she drown in this abyss or reach for the light once more? The decision loomed, pregnant with urgency and dread. In that moment of agonizing uncertainty, it became clear, there was no turning back. Emily felt the weight of the shadows clinging, tugging her deeper, and something primal ignited inside her, a spark of pure, fierce love. Alex needed her. In the swirling darkness, she felt the cries of countless souls press against her, urging her to join them, but one voice shone brighter than all the rest: her son. Alex! She screamed, her voice shattering the veil of despair. She could see him, hazy yet undeniable, standing firm against the encroaching dark, his small hands reaching for her. Mommy, help me! His voice broke through the cacophony. The shadows around him hesitated, as if they feared her resolve. She surged forward, stealing strength from her fear. It propelled her like a wave. No more! She shouted, the defiance erupting like fire from her core. You will not take my son! With sheer determination, she plunged deeper into the darkness, rebelling against its cold grasp wrapping around her. Every ounce of her maternal instinct surged through her, as if the love she felt for Alex was a blade capable of slicing through the thick tendrils of despair. I will not be lost to you, she declared, clarity igniting in her heart. The shadows shrieked, recoiling slightly, as if they recognized the power behind her defiance. That tiny pinprick of light gleamed again, brighter now, filling the space with warmth that laughter could no longer choke out. Come on, Mommy! Alex cried, the innocence in his voice cutting through Emily like a beacon in the dark. She could see him clearly now, desperation and bravery etched into his face. The realization sank in, she wasn't just fighting for him, they were fighting together. Hold on! She urged, pushing her way through the darkness, struggling against icy fingers that bruised her skin. She lunged for her son, stretching her arms wide, ready to absorb whatever chaos unleashed beneath that bridge of shadows. Don't let go! She bellowed, just as her fingers brushed the warmth of Alex's hand. Hope surged through her, bursting forth like flames igniting dried matchsticks. I'll find you! She vowed, the light intertwining with her spirit, feeding her determination. The shadows writhed, their grasp faltering. You will pay for this rebellion, they shrieked in tandem. Fear twisted within her, but she pushed it aside. They would not claim her or her son. With a fierce yank, she pulled Alex into her embrace, their hearts racing together, pulsing with the rhythm of a singular heartbeat. He felt small yet fierce, a force of nature standing tall beside her. The dark howled, tearing through the air as if the unhappy entities were thrashing, searching for the slightest chink in their resolve. Together, Alex! We can defeat them! Emily burst, holding on to her son, feeling the warmth of their connection fortify her against the onslaught. They surged forward, hand in hand, and Emily drew upon all her strength. Let us go home! She cried, the words bursting from her throat empowered. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked in anguish as Emily and Alex dove into that radiant light, the rift between the realms snapping back. It engulfed them as those tendrils of darkness clawed for their retreating forms, but it was too late. The light threaded around them, cocooning them in safety. "Mommy!" Alex squealed, his voice echoing with laughter, bright and intoxicating. As the dark diminished, collapsing into nothingness, together, they tumbled back into their living room, safe, bathed in the soft glow of their lamp. The air felt fresh, almost electric-free from the weight of malevolence. The house, once a prison of shadows, hummed with a gentle energy. Emily's heart raced as she caught her breath, scanning her son's face, the joy lighting up her spirit. "We made it," she whispered, pulling him close. "I was scared," he admitted, eyes wide, but filled with a brightness that melted the last remnants of dread. "I know, baby. But we're together now," she reassured him, brushing back his hair. "Together, we're stronger." The chaos faded, memories of darkness exchanging places with newfound light. They were free, but it was more than just escaping the clutches of the cursed night. Emily felt a shift within her, a deeper understanding of love and courage, forged under unimaginable circumstances. "We've beaten them," she whispered to Alex, but a nagging feeling remained, almost like an unfinished sentence at the back of her mind. However, as the night deepened and tranquility spread, she chose to embrace the warmth of their rebirth, unfurling a future woven together, brighter than all that had threatened to tear them apart. With a deep sigh of relief, Emily smiled down at Alex, feeling the weight of her heart lift. Though the darkness lingered beyond the walls, it held no power over them anymore. The laughter, joyous, rang through their home, a victorious echo against what once sought to consume them. Later that night, as they settled down, a soft calm washed over the house. Emily snuggled on the couch beside Alex, leaning in to tell stories, reveling in the innocence of their renewed bond. And as she looked out into the inky sky, for the first time in a long while, she felt hope illuminating every corner of her heart, flickering like the stars that had always watched over them, steadfast and bright. That was the real magic, the light of family, resilience, and love that could fend off even the darkest of shadows. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories bursting with twists and turns. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the content coming. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.